Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wachowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, quorum is present. We ask everyone present, including our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery, to please stand for today's prayer. We ask Assembly Chaplain Father Constantine Papadimos to offer today's prayer.
Let us pray. Lord, one of the reasons that people don't get the most out of their lives is that they can't stop thinking about themselves. The more we think about ourselves, the more depressed we can become. The more we think about ourselves, the less aware we are of the other things going on outside our personal sphere. Help us, Lord, to focus less on ourselves and more on the needs of others. Give us more spiritual insight into what life is really all about, why you put us on this earth, and what makes for a truly happy life. Amen.
We ask everyone present to remain standing and join us in the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Knight as he leads us in the pledge. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, March 1st, 2012. The Assembly met at 9 a.m. Honorable Fiona O'Mara, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dawson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Timothy Moreland reading. The roll was called. Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Berry Hill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesborough, Conway.
Mr. Allen moves and Mr. Knight seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read. Amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker and members, I request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow Assemblymember Carter to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
Also request to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow members or Assemblymember Norby to have a guest or two guests at his desk and a photographer on the floor.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly Members Knight, Solorio, Speaker John Perez, Assembly Member Hernandez, and Assembly Member Lowenthal to speak on Adjourn in Memory.
Without objection.
Also, Mr. Speaker, there is a committee report at the desk relative to AB 1200. I request unanimous consent that the committee There is a committee report at the desk relative to AB 1200 by Ms. Ma. I request unanimous consent that the committee report be deemed read and deemed adopted.
Is there any objection to Mr. Calderon's request? Seeing and hearing none, the committee report is deemed read and deemed adopted.
I now request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rules 63 and 77 to allow Ms. Ma to take up AB 1200 without reference to file for the purpose of concurrence in Senate amendments today. The suspension of Assembly Rule 63 is to allow the wharf, and AR 77 relates to the one-day waiting period.
Is there any objection? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, the request is granted. Colleagues, we have some guest introductions. If you could please direct your attention to Ms. Carter so she can introduce her guests. Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Please join me in welcoming my sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority for their legislative day at the Capitol. Alpha Kappa Alpha is an international service organization founded on the campus of Howard University in 1908. It is the oldest Greek-lettered organization established by African-American college-educated women. Its membership is comprised of distinguished women who boast excellent academic records, proven leadership skills, and are involved in the global community through advocacy and service to all mankind. This year's theme is AKA CARES, Empowering Our Community. With us today are the International Representative, Dorothea Johnson, Esquire, Regional Director, Dr. Laverne Tarkington, and Northern and Southern Connection Cluster Coordinators, Sarah Leslie Tinson and Lauren Bryan Kennebrew. Please join me in welcoming the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority.
Okay, colleagues, we have another guest introduction. Please take your seats. Please take your seats, colleagues. And direct your attention to Assemblymember Norby so he can introduce his guests. Mr. Norby, you are recognized.
Yes, Martha. You know Gil Cedillo, you've seen him on Univision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to introduce my wife, Martha, and my little boy, Johnny. They've come here to see their taxpayer dollars, her husband and his daddy, hard at work, right, little Johnny? What do you have to say? Okay. Little Johnny. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I know that babies are very exciting, but please take your seats so we can proceed with our business. Colleagues, please take your seats. Okay, business on the daily file. Okay, the House will now take up Assembly Bill 1200 without reference to file. This is Assembly Bill 1200 without reference to file. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1200 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to elections and declaring an urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1200 makes several changes to the method of electing central committees for the 2012 primary election. AB 1200 makes several changes requested by local election officials to ease the burden of conducting such elections. It eliminates certificates of election for central committee members, allows party officials to swear in their members, and eliminates the requirement that local election officials organize the first meetings of the American Independent Party. AB 1200 also makes changes requested by several local Democratic and Republican county central committees, modifying the method of electing their memberships to reflect a more proportional representation. Without AB 1200 and the urgency, the San Francisco Democratic and Republican central committees will be electing the new assembly members to District 12 and 13, which now represents San Joaquin Valley. With bipartisan support, respectfully ask for your aye vote on the Senate amendments to be concurred in.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just for the Republican caucus, it is part of your floor packet, even though it's a WARF, it's the last bill on there, and we don't have an objection to it. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to take a quick moment to note that this bill does propose a change for the Sacramento County Democratic Party Central Committee elections. It is agreed upon by the members of the party and much desired, so I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you very much. I agree with my colleagues. This is a request put into codification of changes requested by Democratic Central Committee members and leadership so that there would be more equal representation. I urge an aye vote. Vote aye for little Johnny.
Well, seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 72, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 72, no 0 on the matter. The measure is adopted. Senate amendments are concurred in. We're going to go to Assembly third reading. Assembly third reading file. File items 2 and 3 pass and retain. File item 4, H.R. 23. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 23 by Assemblymember Hall relative to Problem Gambling Awareness Week.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. H.R. 23 recognizes the week of March 4th as the National Problem Gaming Awareness Week and commends the individuals and organizations that bring awareness and treatment to this issue. Gaming and gambling is a form of entertainment for many in California, California being the second largest state in the nation in terms of gross revenues. With that, we must also recognize that there is a potential negative side to gambling that deeply impacts individuals, their families, and the society as a whole. So, members, I ask that you join me in recognizing this important week and request a roll to be open for co-authors. I respectfully ask for your aye vote subsequently.
Mr. Hall has asked that the first roll be open for co-authors. This is for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors. Clerk will close the roll. Let the record show that this measure has 66 co-authors. Without objection, we can take a voice vote on this matter. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File items 5 and 6 pass and retain. This concludes business on the daily file. We will now move to announcements and adjourn in memories. Okay, Mr. Fuhrer has an announcement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just want to announce that immediately upon adjournment, the Judiciary Committee will convene in the Rules Committee room.
Okay, immediately upon adjournment, the Judiciary Committee will meet in the Rules Committee room. We're now going to move to adjourn in memories. Mr. Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise to request that we adjourn in memory of Raul Sanchez Solis, who passed away last week at the age of 88. His was a quintessentially American story. He was born in Tucson, Arizona, but spent much of his early years in Veracruz, Mexico. He returned to the United States, ultimately settling in La Puente, California. He eventually took English language classes, and it's there where he met a young woman by the name of Juana Sequeira, who would ultimately become his wife of 58 years. He worked long hours in the fields and later at the rail yards and factories to provide for his family. He eventually became active in the labor movement, fighting for the men and women he worked with every single day, as a young man, then as a husband and father. The passion for justice that he brought to his every action was matched only by his natural warmth, generosity, and spirit of deep faith. Like many Californians, he loved and felt at home in the pristine natural beauty of California, and he was a strong advocate for their preservation. But above all, he was a loving and devoted father. And those of us who knew him are deeply moved by the pride we know he felt when his daughter Hilda took the oath of office as United States Secretary of Labor. His life is a reminder of why California is such a unique and wonderful place. Like so many, he came to California from humble origins. But like so many Californians, he made the most of his potential and then devoted himself to ensuring that every Californian continues to have the same opportunities. He's survived by his wife Juana and 7 children, Irma, Raul Jr., Hilda, Victor, Beatriz, Ana, Leticia, and by 10 grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren. Those of us who knew him will be deeply grateful of the memories we have of him. I respectfully ask that we adjourn in memory of Raul Sanchez Solis, father of U.S. Secretary of Labor Hilda Solis.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also stand here to say a few words in memory of Raul Solis, my constituent, a resident of the city of La Puente. Raul loved his family. Raul taught his family the significance of being involved and engaged in community. He taught his daughters and his son that there is no limits. And I think that's why we saw the tremendous leadership that came out of that household. Daughters that are experts in engineering, a daughter that's a social worker, and of course a daughter that's in the President's cabinet as Secretary of Labor. That kind of ethic and commitment to community is something that we should honor in all our communities and our households as we work to make our state a better place. It was modeled in his home, and it was modeled through this gentleman's acts and love for his family. So it's a sad day for the 57th Assembly District, as it is for our state, and I ask you to also please join in honoring this great man. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joanna Ramos died after a fight in an alley behind her elementary school, the same school that my kids went to a number of years ago. In Long Beach, like all densely populated areas, young people die with distressing regularity. But the thing about Joanna Ramos is that she was just 10 years old. And she wasn't cut down in gang crossfire. She was scuffling with another girl over the affections of a boy. She suffered a head trauma during that fight, and now her family is mourning the loss. A 10-year-old girl, Joanna Ramos, died after a fight with a schoolmate. That should give all of us pause. She didn't have to die. Members, I think this is far too common, this kind of fighting outside of the school boundaries. We have to ask ourselves, what is our responsibility here to cut down this kind of senseless violence between two young people? This has shaken the people of Long Beach. Joanna Ramos was 10 years old, a life ahead of her. It breaks your heart. It broke the heart of the whole community, and it breaks my heart too. Thank you. Thank you very much for honoring the memory of such a short life.
Thank you. Mr. Soloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to adjourn in memory of Jan Harp Domini, who passed away on February 27th in her Anaheim home. She was 60. Jan grew up in Anaheim, attended Sycamore Junior High, graduated from Anaheim High School in 1969, and later studied journalism at Cal State Fullerton. In 1975, Jan began her involvement in public education as a volunteer in her daughter's classroom. She subsequently joined the school's PTA and would go on to serve in numerous leadership roles locally and even served as California State President in 2001. Outside of her PTA work, Jan held many volunteer and leadership positions with countless organizations such as the Red Cross, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the California Education Coalition, and the Anaheim High School Alumni Association. Additionally, Jan served on the Anaheim Union High School Board of Trustees until just now, and for serving her local community and her decades of volunteer work. On behalf of children and parents across the state, I would like to adjourn in memory of Jan Harp Domini. Jan is survived by her husband, Greg, daughter, Christine, sons, Kevin and Kyle, and 6 grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd like to rise to adjourn in the memory of Dr. James Wilson. Dr. James Wilson was formerly a resident of the Los Angeles area. He passed away this past week, March 2nd, at the age of 80. Wilson was a man of reason and considered one of the nation's most significant thinkers about crime and other urban matters. His insights into society, law, and bureaucracy earned him a number of awards and honorable acknowledgments. One of his most notable recognitions was the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2003. In the 70s, Wilson was a dedicated researcher who studied actual police behavior, specifically studying how police do and should use their discretion. He believed that criminals make a rational choice to commit crime based on an assessment of its risks and awards that were highlighted in his book, Thinking About Crime, in 1975. Wilson asserted that the swiftness and certainty of punishment were more important than its severity. His insights about public safety revolutionized how we think about police order, and this insight was further highlighted in his famous 1982 article, Broken Windows. Dr. Wilson suggested last year in an article with the Wall Street Journal, public order is a fragile thing, and if you don't fix the first broken window, soon all the windows will be broken. This theory was adopted by Chief Bratton early in the 2000s and brought to the community policing in LAPD, which is now accepted all over the country as one of the theories that helps police do their business and keep crime low. I ask that you adjourn in Dr. Wilson's memory.
Thank you. Those who spoke, please bring those names to the desk to be printed in the journal. Session schedule is as follows. Tuesday, March 6th, check-in session. Wednesday, March 7th, check-in session. Thursday, March 8th, floor session at 9 a.m. Friday, March 9th, no session, no check-in session. All our items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen moves and Ms. Conway seconds that this House stand adjourned until Thursday, March 8th at 9 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.